Hello, hi everybody. This is Cindy from Suprema, and I'm in charge of technical support. Today, I'm going to give you a brief introduction about BioStar 1.91. The session will take about 40 minutes, and if you do have any questions, please note it down, and all the questions will be addressed at the end of the session. We are going to have a separate question and answer session, so yes. Alright, so I believe all the attendees here today are very expert in BioStar 1. So rather than going through what is BioStar 1 and how to configure device settings and what are the menus and how to use BioStar 1, instead of that, I'm going to tell you about what is so special about BioStar 1.91 and what is new about BioStar 1.91 and what are the limitations about BioStar 1.91. Okay, so what is BioStar 1 and what is BioStar 1.91? As you know, this is from our website. That BioStar 1 is a comprehensive access control and time attendance management software featuring TCP/IP based system architecture with IP devices. And I'm sure that all of you already know about this. But what is so special about BioStar 1.91? It is that we are now supporting version 2 devices, which are BioStation 2, BioStation A2, BioStation L2. These devices were only developed and to be added on to the BioStar 2 software, which is our new software. However, we have decided to support these three devices into BioStar 1.91 for our customers. When we first decided to add these devices as these version 2 devices to BioStar 1.91, we had to have many discussions and decide how to add these three devices into BioStar 1.91. And this is the conclusion that came up after a numerous number of discussions. BioStar 2 devices will basically follow all the rules and concepts of BioStar 1 system. But as you know, the version 2 devices, they have expanded set of features and have more capabilities than BioStar 1 devices. But the features and capabilities of BioStar 2 devices are constrained by the features and capabilities of BioStar 1 system to maintain the consistency with BioStar 1. Well, for now, by just reading these sentences, you don't really understand what this is actually referring to. However, as we go through the session, that you will understand what we mean by this. Okay, so what are the devices that are supported in BioStar 1.91? It is BioStation A2, it's BioStation 2, BioStation L2, and Secure IO2. Unfortunately, we are not supporting BioStation W2 device yet, but we do have a plan to have it included in BioStar 1.92 or BioStar 1.93. And these familiar devices, BioLightNet, BioEntry W, BioEntry Plus, Express S2, these devices must have BioStar 1 firmware loaded onto the devices. So this means if you have BioLightNet version 2 devices, they will not be compatible with BioStar 1.91 until you downgrade its firmware to BioStar 1 firmware. So please don't get confused. When you have BioStar 2 firmware loaded onto these four devices, you must downgrade their firmware. This is also another question that we received a lot from our customers is, what SDK should we use? Is it BioStar 1 or is it BioStar 2? The answer is very simple. For version 1 devices, you must use BioStar 1 SDK. For version 2 devices, you must use BioStar 2 device SDK. It's because the functions and the DLL that we use for these devices are very different, so you need to use a separate SDK. BIOSTAR 1.91 was actually developed using both SDKs as well. Alright, so this is the BIOSTAR server configuration screenshot. The installation is easy. You can download our latest BIOSTAR 1.91 from our website, and just with a few clicks you will install our software. This is the BIOSTAR server config, and it's very same as the previous version. The only difference is that we can now set a different port for version 1 devices and version 2 devices. The port for version 1 devices, it can be changed from 1480, which is the default. It can be changed, but for version 2 devices, it cannot be changed. It must be 51212 as a default. Let me explain you a little bit more about the difference between the ports. I'm sure that you all know about our connection mode. When you connect our devices to BIOSTAR software, there are two different connection modes. There are one from server to device, so it's connecting from BIOSTAR server to the devices. Another connection mode is device to server. So it's the device, excuse me, it's the device that are connected to the BIOSTAR server. When the connection is from BIOSTAR server to device, means we are searching for devices from the client software. For version 1 devices, between the server and client, it uses a default port of 1480. Between the client and the device, we use 1470 or 1471. How about version 2 devices? The port between the server and client is the same, 1480. However, the port between the client and the device, it's different. It's 51211. So there's a difference between the port number. If the connection mode is from device to server, the connection mode is also different. The port number being used is also different. Version 1 devices, between the server client, it's always the same, 1480. Between the server and device, we use random ports. Version 2 devices, between the server and client, it's 1480. Between the server to device, it's 51212. So if you need to open a certain port because of the firewall, you have to open port 1480, 51212, 51211, and 1471, and 1470. Okay, so I'm going to go into a device tab of BIOSTAR 1.91 and to share you what are the limitations and when you use BIOSTAR 2 devices with BIOSTAR 1.91, and what are the differences between version 1 devices and version 2 devices in terms of the device menu. Connection mode that we were just talking about, it's a little bit different between version 1 and version 2 devices. Version 1 devices, when the connection mode is from server to device mode, the devices are always located under the device tree. If the connection mode is from device to server mode, the devices will be located under the BIOSTAR server tree. How about for version 2 devices? Version 2 devices will always be located under the BIOSTAR server tree, regardless of its connection mode. Whether it's server to device or device to server, it's always be under the BIOSTAR server tree. And I'm going to open my BIOSTAR 1 and to show you the difference. Right here next to me, I have BIOSTATION T2, I have BIOSTATION A2 next to me. This is BIOSTAR 1.91. I don't have any devices connected now. Let me search for the devices which are located right next to me. Okay, now I have 13 devices. These are all the devices that are on the same network. This device, T2, is the one next to me. When I click add, because the connection mode is from server to device, it will be located under the device tree. Just like this. How about the A2 right next to me, which is this one? When I click add, one device is added. As you see, this device will go straight under the BioStar server tree, even though the connection mode was from server to device. Let me change its name so you don't get confused. This is BioStar A2. This is my version 1 BioStation T2. Right, I'm going to change its connection mode to the server to device mode. Then it will be located under the BioStar server tree, just like the A2. Now we have both devices connected under BioStar server tree. So this is the difference. Next is the master slave, host slave with connection mode. The very important thing is when you are configuring a master slave configuration using the RS-485, you cannot use version 1 devices and version 2 devices together. This is because the protocol for RS-485 that we use between the version 1 devices and version 2 devices are very different, and they are not compatible with each other. So if you have BioStar 2 devices, you must connect BioStar 2 devices as RS-485. If you have BioStar 1 version 1 devices, you must connect version 1 devices as with RS-485. Also, this is only applicable for version 2 devices. There are two different RS-485 modes. There are host and slave. But for version 2 devices, there are one more mode, which are called a default. When the device's RS-485 mode is default, it means the device will work as a standalone. Or it means that its RS-485 mode will change to slave mode automatically if it is connected to a host device. If I give an example, previously in version 1 devices, if you wanted to connect two devices, one device as a host, another device as a slave, because by default all our devices came as a host mode, what you had to do is connect the slave device to the BioStar with the LAN cable and change its connection mode to slave and change another connection mode to the host, and then you disconnect it from the network, you configure the RS-485 and then connect the host and slave, which was very inconvenient. Why do you have to connect slave devices to the LAN to change its mode? That's why we came up with a default. So version 2 devices, they have default. All the devices are coming as a default. What it means is you will change one device to as a host, another device will remain as a default. And you configure the RS-485, the default, the device that had a default mode will be automatically changed to slave mode when it is found by the host device. So there is no inconvenience of connecting the slave device to the BioStar software and change its mode manually, which are really convenient. But this is only for version 2 devices. If I give you an example, I have BioStation L2 also located right next to me, and this L2 is connected to the BioStation A2 as RS-485. If I go to the A2, its mode is set to host. Okay, it's host. The L2, the mode is set as a default. Now I'm going to try to search a slave device. Okay, here L2 just found. I go click add. Devices added. Now the BIOS L2 right next to me, its RS-485 mode has been changed to slave mode. So the most important part of this slide was you must have BIOS version 2 devices as version 2 device connected as RS-485, version 1 devices connected to version 1 device as RS-485. You cannot mix the different versions. Alright, the double mode and the dual authentication. Double mode, as you know, it is when the device will open a door only when there are 2 credentials presented. This was called a double mode, and it was available to configure from the operation mode. However, for version 2 devices, we have changed the term from double mode into a dual authentication, and this can be configurable from the door tab, not from the device and operation mode. Template on card, yes. Template on card can be used from both version 1 devices and version 2 devices. For version 1 devices, you had an option to enable or disable this TOC functions. For version 2 devices, by default, the version 2 device will accept both CSN and the template on card. And unfortunately, we don't support the secure credential cards in version 2 devices. They are not supported anymore in version 1.91. Access on cards that were issued previously from version BIOSTAR 2 cannot be used in BIOSTAR 1.91. They will not be granted. And you cannot use the same template on card that were issued from version 1 devices from the version 2 devices. So the template on cards that were issued from version 1 devices can only be used from the version 1 devices and not from version 2 devices, and vice versa. And input and output. For version 1 devices, you had an input, so when you had the input that's coming from whatever port, then you were able to configure many different output from the output tab. However, from version 2 devices, there's only an input tab. There's no output tab. And you can only set 4 different output when you had input signal coming from this input. So if I give you an example, okay, for version 2 devices, you had input, so when there's any input coming here, you could set the different output to send out. But for version 2 devices, it's very limited. It's when there's signal coming through to input 0, these are the 4 different outputs that you could do: disable device, restart the device, or release alarm. If you set the generic input, you could also set the output here. So it means when there is input signal coming to input 0, you could set any signal to go out through the relay. But it's very limited. The input and output setting is very limited compared to version 1 devices. Okay, so, and the TA, it's all the same for version 1 devices and version 2 devices. You can use version 2 devices and get the logs and generate the TA reports. The only difference is the terminologies, that not use is equal to not use, manual is equal to by user, manual fix is equal to last choice, and auto change is equal to by schedule, and event fix is fixed. So mainly the difference will be the terminology differences. Weekend, yes, you can use the weekend, but the version 2 devices, they will only support extended mode only, so there's no legacy mode available. And for version 2 devices, we only support weekend card out and weekend card in. So previously in BIOS 1 devices, you could also set the user ID to send out, but this is not available for version 2 devices. So only card number coming in and out through the weekend. Alright, so that was all the limitation differences from the device side. And from the user side, department, for version 2 devices, we do not store department information on the device, whereas BIOS version 1 devices does. The PIN, the difference is about the encryption. The version 2 devices, we encrypt the PIN data, and version 1 devices, we don't. So if you transfer user from the software to BIOS 2 devices, the PIN data is encrypted and transferred. However, because of its encryption is only one-way encrypted, if you retrieve the users from the devices, the PIN, it cannot be used anymore, because we cannot decrypt the PIN code. And enrolling a user on slave devices, as you know, our version 2 devices, the slave mode is actually a dummy reader. So there are no users stored inside the slave devices. The same applies to BIOS 1.91. You don't have to enroll a user to slave devices. You don't need to, and actually you cannot enroll users on slave devices, but only for version 2 devices. For version 1 devices, you must transfer users to the slave devices. From the user profile, yes, we can send employee's image and send a private message for version 1 devices, BIOS Station, BIOS T2, and X Station, but this feature is only supported in BIOS A2 only, and it is only transferring image log only. So you can only transfer the user image into the BIOS Station A2. Other features like private messages and display count, are not supported, and this get from device, delete from devices, these are also not working. So the only working part for version 2 devices is the transfer image to A2. Private authentication mode. I'm going to explain about the admin level first. The admin level for version 1 devices, it's only normal and admin user. Same applies to version 2 devices, only normal and admin user. But if you remember, in BIOS 2, we had a device administrator. So you are able to set certain users to be as a device administrators on the device. But this is not working anymore. So the device administrator will be same as an admin user, and you are not able to assign any device administrator per device. Next is the private authentication mode. It is not supported in version 2 devices, only for version 1 devices. Even you change it to private authentication mode for version and send it to version 2 devices, it will not work. From the card, when you issue a card, you could enable a bypass card, and this is only supported in version 1 devices. For version 2 devices, we do not have a such feature as bypass card in version 2. So what we have decided to do is, when you issue a card with bypass card, it will automatically trigger a private authentication mode and to turn it on as card only. And this is only for version 2 devices. this is the most important part of the presentation, I think. For HID card, for EM card, iClass card, when you read the card from version 1 devices and version 2 devices, the card numbers are very same. However, it's just a MyFair card. It's different. It's because the byte order of the MyFair card on BIOSTAR 2 devices is opposite to the one on the BIOSTAR 1 devices. And I'm sure that you have heard about MSB and LSB. If the byte order of the version 1 devices is set to MSB, you need to set the byte order for version 2 devices as LSB and vice versa. It's because the byte order is completely different, completely opposite, not different. If I show an example, you can set the card ID format and byte order as MSB. If this is the card number 1110010 blah blah blah, if the order is set to MSB, we are reading from left to right. This is for version 1 devices. Version 1 devices, same card number, but when the byte order is MSB, we are reading right to left. And that's why we need to change its byte order to LSB, so it will read from left to right and get the same card number as version 1 devices and version 2 devices. Let me show an example. So version 2 device, the byte order is MSB. Version 1 device, the byte order is MSB also. I'll go to a user tab, have a Cindy. I have already registered a card number here, and I'm going to transfer this user to both devices. Transferring success. Go to the real-time monitoring. I'm going to read my card from the T2. You see, I get verify success. I'm going to read the same card to A2, and I'm getting verify fail, and it says unregistered card. It's because even though it's the same card, the byte order, because of the byte order, the card number that are being read from the device is different. I'm going to change my A2, change my byte order to LSB. Now the byte order is LSB. The T2, the byte order is MSB. Now it should read the same number when I present the same card. I'm going to read it from the T2. I get a verify success. If I read it from A2, now I get verify success again. So this MSB LSB setting is very important, because I think you're going to get a lot of questions from your customers saying, oh, why is my card not working in version 2 devices when it is working in version 1 devices? Please check if the byte order setting is correct. This is a very slight limitations. You could actually find the user by name, department, and ID and card. This read card button here, it's not supported in version 2 devices. It's only for version 1 devices, but it's a very minor limitation, I think. Now from the access group, this is also a very another important part. As you know, all the devices have a default group settings, which are no access and full access. With BIOSTAR 2 devices, users are allowed to gain access when there are no door assigned to the device. And it is working just like full access. So what it means is, even the default group is set to no access, a user can still gain access to the devices when there are no door assigned to the device. However, as soon as the device is assigned to a door, then it will work like no access and block all the users without the access group. Let me show an example. We go to a device, A2, change it to access group. Now the default group is no access. However, I can still get access granted when I present my card, just like this. However, as soon as I add the device to a door, I'm going to assign my device to a door. Then read my card again. Now I get not granted. It's because the card that I'm using, it doesn't have any access group. It's not granting me an access. What I should do is I must create an access group. So I have this new zone here, have a new access group. Assign myself. Right, I'm going to transfer this access group to a device, and I'm going to transfer myself again to A2. Now because the Cindy Lee, the user have an access group, it should grant me a user. Yes, now I get verified success. So what it means is the default access group no access, it will work as no access only when the device is assigned to a door. When it is not assigned to a door, it's just a standalone without any relays. Even the default group is no access, a user can still get access into a device. Another difference between the default access group is about the full access. Previously we were talking about no access, but how about when we change its default group to a full access for version 1 devices? If the device's default group is set to full access, the user will still gain access depends on the access group. So it means that version 1 devices will check the user's access group first and grant or deny the user by the access group. If the user don't have any access group, it will get full access. It will be a full access. How about version 2 devices? If the default group is full access, the device will no longer care about the access group. The device does not use an access group to grant or deny the user. It will always grant all the users even though the access group is defined. So please be careful. We highly recommend to use no access for version 2 devices. Now from the door's perspective, the limitations and the differences. So for a door, simple, you cannot use version 1 devices with version 2 devices for a door. So for one same door, you cannot have version 1 devices and version 2 devices. Same applies to the zone. You cannot use version 1 devices and version 2 devices for a same zone. And BIOS 2 devices are only supported in anti-payback and fire alarm zone. One more limitation is for version 2 devices, if you are configuring a zone, it must be connected as RS-485. So what it means is if you have two version 2 devices as connected as a LAN, you cannot configure a zone. A zone for version 2 devices, it must be two devices that are connected as RS-485, 5, and they will be able to configure an anti-passback zone. And I believe this is a huge limitations in BioStar 1.91, but we are going to upgrade it, and hopefully it will be fixed in version 1.92. Unlock time zone, lock time zone, it's only supported in version 1 devices and not supported in version 2 devices. Held open and forced open alarm. When there are held open and forced open alarm, the alarm will be automatically off when the door is closed. But this is only for version 1 device. So if the door was holding open for too long, it will be automatically off when the door is closed. However, for version 2 devices, this held open and forced open alarm, it will not be off when the door is closed. The only way to release alarm is that administrator clicked the release alarm from the monitoring tab. Now this is our final slides, the limitations and differences in monitoring perspective. You are able to get the log files from the devices as a USB. So you export the logs into a USB memory stick and plug it to a PC and get the logs. Version 2 devices, we do not support this. Alright, so this is the end of my BioStar 1.91 introduction today. Thanks for joining, and this recorded session will be sent out to every attendee here today with the summary of question and answers and with the slides. Thank you.